Uh,
You
Mr.
hold on just please.
Chairman of the FICCI Assam State Council has had an emergency at work for which he had to travel out. He will try and join us a little later, but he has requested me to welcome everyone to this very important webinar that we are having.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to, welcome everyone. It is a great pleasure to welcome you all today to this webinar on understanding the benefits of the National Pension Scheme for corporates specifically. I especially welcome Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay, Chairman of PFRDA. Thank you, sir, for joining, for your support in organizing this webinar and for joining us.
Biswajit, I was just like to comment. I'm sorry. I think there's some, Mr. Bandyopadhyay from PFRD. He's though he's joined us technically, but just he's about to, he's in a call right now. So he's just asked if we can wait for a couple of seconds.
Okay. So we'll wait till he joins. Hello. Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening.
So thank you so much for joining us and for all your support. I think with your permission now, can we start?
Yeah, please go ahead. I'm delayed by 5 minutes. Somebody came from the ministry.
Not a problem, sir. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. It's a great privilege to be able to welcome you today for this webinar on understanding the benefits of the National Pension Scheme for Corporate. Mr. Pankaj Borwa, the chairman of the Assam State Council, who was supposed to deliver the formal welcome address, has had an emergency at his factory and he has had to rush out. He will try and join us later, but he has requested me to formally welcome everyone on his behalf. I would especially like to welcome Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay, Chairman, PFRDA. Thank you, sir, for your support in organizing this webinar and for joining us.
Thank you.
I'd also like to welcome Mr. Suranjan Banerjee, Associate Director, Retirement at Wills Towers, Watson. Mr. Mono Fukan, Chief General Manager, PFRDA, and of course, Behroz Kamdin, Partner, Deloitte Haskins and Sales LLP. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm sure all of us are aware of the need for retirement planning and the important role that employers need to play in helping to secure the future of employees. A robust pension sector is an important prerequisite for ensuring social security for our people. Unfortunately, in our country, retirement benefits planning is still ignored and neglected by many, mostly due to historical and social factors, where parents live with their children and children are expected to take care of their parents after that time. But society and our outlooks are changing fast, and we need to adapt. As our livelihood conditions and access to healthcare improve, people will live longer and longer lives. Already, India is home to 10% of global senior citizens, and this is a number which is expected to double in the 15 years from now. What this means is that you may very well spend as many years in retirement as you did during your career. This means generating enough income to meet day-to-day expenses for possibly 30 years or more, and especially daunting challenge in an environment where few sources of guaranteed income are available to you. Currently, pension-related schemes in India, both mandatory and voluntary, cover only a third of the labor force, and only around a quarter of the elderly have access to pensions. With the increasing cost of living and escalating healthcare costs, and with factors like migration and increasingly nuclear families, it has become even more important that people take pensions planning seriously and remain secured and self-reliant post-retirement. We feel that in order to impart momentum to the growth of pensions sector, there is a need for clear communication to all the employers and employees on pension schemes and their benefits. People should also be aware of the tax benefits associated with pension plans, and especially the national brilliant scheme that we have in place. Pension plans should also relate to the existing salary levels and must be able to sustain the cost of living post-retirement. I think many of us are already aware of the National Pension Scheme, which offers a very robust system for retirement planning. NPS has gained a lot of popularity over the years, and we have just been informed that further simplified and onboarding process, I think it has been there for some time now for the subscribers as a response to the current situation. In recent times, we have seen that PFRDA has been very active in creating awareness about NPS and its benefits. In fact, this is the second webinar that we are doing here in the Northeast with PFRDA on this. As a result of these initiatives, I think NPS has already gained a lot of momentum. What remains to be done is to push it further. I'm sure today's workshop will aid in that direction. And I once again welcome everyone. And I hope today's session is very informative for all of us. Thank you very much. May I now welcome Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay and request him, the chairperson of PFRDA, to kindly deliver his keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Chakraborty, for giving production to the pension system in India and talking about NPS. And I thank FICCI Assam State Council for arranging this program. And as you said rightly, that we are engaging with industry bodies like you, CII, maybe Indian Chamber of Commerce, and almost all associations and chambers of commerce to create this kind of awareness. And as you rightly said, Mr. Chakraborty, that pension planning is almost non-existent in our country, and to a great extent it is ignored. So at a younger age, people still don't feel that they are going to retire, maybe after 3 decades, 3.5 decades, but they don't want to plan and start the planning early. So it so happens that just before retirement, maybe when 5, 10 years are remaining, then suddenly they realize that they have not met any arrangements. And as a result, then they start doing something. Now, certain data about the demographics is that possibly, as per the UN World Population Prospect 2019, by 2027, in another 5 years' time, India is going to be the most populous country in the world by beating China. That is one part. Secondly, the demographic dividend that we are enjoying today is that a large proportion of our population is still in the working age group. That dividend is going to reverse over a period of time. So much so that by 2050, another 3 decades, we'll see more than 300, 350 million people who are above the age of 60. So the graying population will increase and increase dramatically. So unless they have the proper support, it will be very, very difficult not only for them individually, but for the government of the day also. Because government just cannot forget these people. They have to make some arrangement. And from our limited resources, making arrangement for such a huge population is very, very difficult. As you rightly said, a large part of our workforce is in the unorganized sector. As per our calculation, close to 90%. And if you look at the labor force also, those who are working, almost 76, 77% of them are either self-employed or they are casual labor. They don't have any regular source of income. And the regular wage salary earners are just around 23%. So that's why if we don't arrange for some kind of a pension system, which will encompass not only the organized sector, but the unorganized sector also in a big way, I believe we are not doing the right thing. If we look at India's pension system, it's very, very fragmented. Not only pension, if you look at the retirement benefit system, there is EPFO, there is NPS, obviously, and we have another segment called APY, Atal Pension Yojana, which gives a guaranteed pension and it is targeted towards unorganized sector. And then obviously the insurance companies, they also manage many superannuation funds. So all taken together, we made a small calculation wherever data was available, is that total pension assets is about 33 trillion rupees, 33 lakh crore of rupees, which in terms of the country's GDP works out to just about 13-14%. But whereas when we look at into advanced countries, most of the countries, their pension assets are more than the country's GDP. So much so, Netherlands, I have seen, it is 213%, and Denmark is the topmost. 223% of the GDP is the pension asset of that country. So that means the kind of importance they have given to the pension system of the country. And as a result, there is a report which is brought out jointly by Mercer and CFA, that is known as Mercer CFA Global Pension Index. There, the 2021 index is just out. They have gone into detail into the pension system of 43 countries. Out of that, India is also there. And our standing is 40th out of these 43 countries. Behind us, only 3 countries are there. I believe one is Argentina, one is Philippines, last one is Thailand. Basically, what this pension index does, it looks into many aspects, of course, But the three broad aspects on which the strength of that particular country's pension system depends is the adequacy, the sustainability, and the integrity. Adequacy talks of what amount of pension they are getting, whether it is adequate. Sustainability is that even if they are getting it, what are the chances that it will be paid over a period of time? So on these two counts, we have scored very, very badly, and more so on the adequacy part. There are many pension schemes, many supports given by Government of India for below poverty line people and all that. But if you look at it, it seems so inadequate at one given point of time, then it does not that way in a big way help. Today also, if you look at even the EPFO, the biggest, largest retirement funds, they are managing more than maybe 13 lakh crore. A part of that is EPS, Employees Pension Scheme, which was added in the year 1995. There, in 2014, the minimum pension quantum was changed to 1,000 rupees a month. Now, 2014 to 2022, 8 years have gone by. And if you look at the minimum assured pension there, that 1,000 rupee, whether that will really help us. So that's why everybody has to think on its own, on their own, and they have to create their own corpus. Whenever a person is joining an organization and starts earning, couple of mandatory benefits comes with that. Maybe one is the provident fund, one is the gratuity. Today, Suranjan is there, he will be talking about that. And people feel that these two are enough to give me the safety that I need during my older age. But hardly it will be adequate to give that support when it is absolutely required. So that's why additional level of investment in this kind of pension funds, this is absolutely necessary. We started our journey way back in 2004, and initially it was meant only for central government employees, and slowly it went to different states. Currently also, apart from 2 states, all states and union territories are there with us. Central and state government taken together, almost 77 lakh employees are enjoying the benefit of NPS today. But slowly we opened it up to corporates, to industry, to retail participants and everybody. And that was done way back in 2009, 2010. I'm very happy to say more than 9,800 corporates have already registered with us. By registering, what they are doing, they are creating a platform and making available a platform for their employees through which they can come, they can give their voluntary option, and the employer will ensure that money is deducted from the salary every month and it comes to the NPS system. That is one part of the story. 9,800 corporates have, all big, small, medium, everybody has come and joined. But when we look at the take-up ratio, what percentage of employees have really joined? That is minuscule. Out of these 9,800 corporates, total number of employees who have joined right now is just about 13.5 lakh. That shows we have a lot of spread but no depth. We are not able to go into depth in a particular organization and getting more and more employees on board at a younger age. And unless we are able to get them at a younger age, it will be very difficult for them over a period of time to create a corpus. Why NPS? Because NPS gives a lot of things. When my colleague CGM, Mr. Mono Fukan, will be talking to you, he'll tell you in detail. But 2 things I want to tell you. One is the kind of flexibility it gives. You have a lot of choices, and not only the contribution also is flexible. So normally when we buy an insurance policy or go for a financial contract, there is some kind of a mandatory payment every year or maybe every half an year at some interval. But NPS is something where there is no such mandatory investment. There is a minimum amount which is required to keep that account alive, which is only 1,000 rupees a year. And thereafter, whatever your actual income permits, accordingly, you can invest. And it can vary from year to year depending on your cash position. If you feel that this year I am quite comfortable, I got a good bonus, you can contribute more. Next year you wish to cut it down, you can give it some. So this is one part. Secondly, the cost efficiency. Possibly in India, there is no other financial product which can match NPS in the cost efficiency part. We try to do all our activities in a very, very cost efficient manner. And it is no rocket science that if I am doing it in a cost efficient manner, ultimately the benefit is passed on to the subscriber. Returns are good. Equity is giving more than 13% return over last 13 years. Because private sector, if I look at, it started in 2009. Corporate bonds is giving a return of close to 9.6%. Government securities is giving a return close to 9%, and that too because last 1 year the government security yields have moved up quite a bit, which we have not seen for maybe in earlier years. And I have just calculated that if somebody is a little risk averse, does not want to take large exposure to equity, say one third in 3 asset classes, if you invest, the average returns that it comes over a 13-year period is 10.4%. I'm not telling that we are beating the best of the fund managers in mutual fund industry or elsewhere. But at the same time, it is a very, very competitive return that we are giving and possibly taking the least bit of risks. Because we know ultimately it is a retirement corpus and the person or the subscriber who has come to us would definitely like it to grow at an attractive rate so that it gives them adequate income when they need it most. So I believe these kind of interactions through these industry bodies will definitely encourage the corporates also to guide their people. Because when we have seen that whenever the employer says something, it is hard and the actions are taken. So if the employer also encourages the employees that yes, and today I believe very few private corporates will be providing pensionary benefits apart from PF and gratuity. Not many corporates are providing other superannuation funds or those things. Very few are having that. So if they say that you start early and I am giving you the platform, only you have to give me the consent and the amount that you want to be deducted, and I'll deduct and I'll give it to the NPS system, and it will automatically grow. And if they take this thing to educate their employees, to mentor their employees, from PFRDA side also we are ready. If somebody is interested, we can discuss with them the nitty-gritties, how it can be done, what is the best fund to be chosen, and all those things. We are ready to do that. But these kind of sessions, I believe, will go a long, long way in creating this kind of awareness, which is missing to a great extent now. So, Mr. Bhattacharya, thank you once again, and thank you to your entire team for making this possible today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your very insightful keynote address. And also thank you so much for offering to help companies who want to adopt NPS as a benefit for their employees in terms of educating them, in terms of more information. I hope many of those present here today will take advantage of this help being offered by PFRDA. Before we go on to the next speaker, I'd like to request all our participants, if you have a question, please feel free to ask the question. There is a button there, says ask a question. Click on that button and you could ask your question. We'll get the question and kindly address it to whoever you want to address it to, and the speaker would respond to your question. May I now invite Mr. Suranjan Banerjee. He is Associate Director, Retirement at Wills Towers Watson. He is going to make a presentation on retirement benefits planning. Over to you, Mr. Banerjee.
Right. Thank you so much. Can I just check that my slides are visible and that I'm audible?
Yes, your slides are visible. Yes.
Okay. Great. Just bear with me for 1 second. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the introduction, Mr. Chakravarti, for setting up such a great context, in that backdrop. So I think in terms of my focus for the next few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about retirement benefits planning, and the approach is going to be to present some results from surveys that we've carried out recently. And bear with me when I say recently, it's been, these are large surveys spread across maybe the last couple of years. But even with COVID and some of these other developments that have happened, we envisage the core message coming out of these to largely remain unchanged. So I'm going to talk to you about two surveys, and the idea is that these two surveys together will present to you two sides of essentially what is the same coin. The first survey will pertain to how corporate sector employees are feeling about retirement benefit savings. This survey was carried out in late 2019, where we interviewed, several thousand individuals across several countries on a wide variety of topics. In fact, we do this survey every 2 years, so I'm hoping that soon I'll have the slides from the 2021 survey, which I'll be able to present to you. But essentially, these are what we call feet on the street, right? Hearing from the beneficiaries themselves. Also, I'll talk to you about some high-level themes across countries, and I'll deep dive into some of the themes which we see emerging specifically in India, in that Indian context. The second survey is the State of Retirement Pulse survey in 2020. Again, as we speak, the 2021 survey is live. And here what we effectively did is got responses from about 160 plus private sector companies across different sectors such as pharma, FMCG, manufacturing, IT, telecom, etc. Where essentially we kind of flipped the questions over and actually heard from the employers as to what they think about the retirement offerings or the retirement benefits that they currently offer to their employees. So the idea is that in aggregate, I'll hopefully leave you with a few things that you can take away, both in terms of how employees feel and what employers think about retirement benefits. Okay, so I think with that, what I'll do is I'll get into the employee survey first. And here, before I touch upon the Indian context, I want to share some global themes. Again, I think this has already been mentioned by Mr. Chairman before. But yeah, just so that we know that this is not new. This is not just coming to India. It's been around for a while. That as a start, there's a weakening of provision, and what we mean by that is the promise that companies / governments were making to individuals through what we used to call the defined benefit plans no longer seems to be there, right? So a simple example again is access to a DB pension, which might have been there for government employees till about 2004, after which any new folks joining do not have that access. So that cushion, which effectively comes at a very high price to employers, because all of those risks with investments and demographics and people living longer effectively used to sit with the employer or the sponsor of the plan. So that's actually gone away because the cost of actually meeting those benefits is just prohibitively expensive at this point. What that has done is basically the responsibility now falls to employees. So now we are seeing what are called defined contribution plans. NPS is a defined contribution plan, for example, wherein the benefit is not defined at the outset. What that effectively means is how much pension you will get is an unknown. What you can define is systematic contributions towards that plan. Which we have absolutely no doubt is the right thing to do through SIPs or to keep investing, regardless of what market does, because we know that over the long term, these strategies are great for wealth creation. Also, I think checks and balances are there. For example, there are life cycle funds under the NPS where, you can sort of reduce some of these risks over time. But essentially what we're seeing is that, the ownership is now shifting from employers and sponsors to individuals and employees, something that, Mr. Chairman, I think you also alluded to at the start. Also, finally, a key point to make is that people are struggling to retire at ages that we might have seen in previous generations, right? So here we're talking about things like high debt levels or lack of access to your own property. I think this is something that we could potentially see in India as well as, people move out of, living with parents. There's a mobile workforce. They will have to set up their own accommodation, and the social structures are evolving. I think Mr. Chakravarti, you also mentioned that, right? People no longer live with parents, etc. So that comes at a cost as well, which comes in the way of efficient retirement planning. Now, let me just quickly dive into the India focus. So these responses are from about 2,000 people that were interviewed, specifically residing in India. Apologies for that. Yeah. So here, as you can see from the top left-hand side, 30% of those surveyed felt that they're not heading in the right direction in relation to their general financial position. In relation to their general financial position. And this would include various things, such as emergency funds, long-term savings, etc., to meet certain key life objectives, and would also have a very strong element of debt management. Another 30% also felt, this may not be the exact same 30%, but yes, the number is similar. And they felt also that, in addition to their general financial planning, specifically in the space of retirement, they're not heading in the right direction, right? So which means they feel they do not have adequate savings, or they are not able to put away enough money, at least in their own view, what they would consider enough money for a sustainable retirement. And if you move to the bottom half of the screen, another 60% said they're not saving enough for retirement, which sort of links to the broader finding that individuals are actually struggling to be able to retire, like I said, at ages in previous generations, which basically puts more strain on them. Either they retire on less, which means lower incomes if they want to retire at the same age, or if they want the same income, they've got to work for longer, to be able to have that same level of income, given that they're going to now potentially live longer. Silver lining a little bit, if there is any here, is that more than half the people who responded also said that they have systematically over the last couple of years increased their allocation towards retirement savings, right? So which basically means that not only are they cognizant of the fact that potentially there is a shortfall here, but quite a few of them are actually taking steps in what we would consider to be the right direction. Also, just carrying on from the previous slide, I think if you were to divide the entire population up, I think they will see some different demographic splits on the right-hand side of screen, but I'll focus more on the bifurcation towards the left. So if you've got three different distinct buckets of people, to sum up, 30% would feel that they're falling behind on the retirement savings, and also have not managed to, for whatever reason, take any steps to address the situation. So they are behind and are not able to do anything about it at this point in time. 40% that you can see at the bottom of the screen actually felt that they were on the right track, which means they felt, at least in their own opinion, that they were doing enough to work towards a comfortable retirement. These are folks potentially who've got access to, let's say, housing, or have low levels of debt in their career. They've kind of had careers where they've managed to sort of either pay off that debt or not had the need to take that debt on in the first place, and therefore they feel they've got sufficient money put aside. And the balance 30% in the middle are the ones like we discussed. They feel that they're maybe not on the right track, but they are trying to take the necessary steps. Potentially, if you look at the corporate sector, there are some ways in which you can do that. One great way is to enroll in what might be a voluntary membership of the corporate NPS program. I think so. You mentioned about the low take-up rates. I think that's a great place to go to because it comes with tax benefits and a lot of other good things, which we'll hear about later this afternoon. The other way that people are doing that is, of course, through the VPF channel. But again, certain restrictions and certain recent announcements might deter some folks from increasing their money in VPF. Okay, so right, I'll put some numbers up now, and I think we spoke about adequacy, right? And a lot of these survey results rely on individuals being able to quantify what they consider to be adequate, right? So, having said that, in a lot of cases, it's not that straightforward, because to be able to first even decide what might be adequate, we need to look at outcomes rather than just the contributions, which is what we typically have access to. So on this slide, we're going to talk about something called a very simple basic concept called net replacement ratio. And very simply, this figure effectively defines how much you're likely to have as a regular income, i.e. a steady stream of income, just after you retire, as a percentage of what you were receiving just before you retired as income, right? So just very simple example, if somebody had a last drawn salary of 1 lakh, and just after retiring, they were able to secure a pension of 50,000 per month, and then the maths basically tells us that the replacement ratio, or the net replacement ratio, is very simply 50%, because they've gone from earning what they were earning to earning half. But of course, some expenses come down in retirement, etc. So that may still be enough. From globally, what we see is typically replacement ratios that are targeted are around 60 to 70%. 2/3 used to be a very common figure that we've seen in the UK. All the erstwhile defined benefit plans were kind of set up targeting an overall replacement ratio of 2/3, which means that you can draw 2/3 of your final drawn salary as pension even after you stop working. Now, coming back to the example itself, we've got someone, the numbers basically pertain to someone who starts working at the age of 23 with a basic salary of 25,000 per month. There are other assumptions which we've made, which are at the bottom of the screen, which I'll let you have a look at. But essentially, what we've done is then projected all the mandatory as well as voluntary benefits in time, and then tried to work out for this particular individual what kind of a replacement ratio they'll be able to achieve if they take certain courses of action. So here you find that if we rely only on the statutory benefits, which are PF and gratuity, and we took all of that money, nobody took any loans from it while they were in service, they accumulated all of that money, and they actually took that money to an insurance company and said, okay, here's the entire pot, give me a steady stream of income. We feel that they'll be able to achieve a replacement ratio of about 34%, which basically means that whatever salary they were drawing, about 1/3 they'll be able to get as pension. Of course, assuming that there are certain investment returns and the fact that they don't use that money elsewhere, because as we know, both of these benefits are actually lump sums, right? So there's a behavioral finance element in there as well. If we then introduce what used to be called the superannuation funds, that number would increase from the 34% to about 46%. So that's a 12% jump. And then on top of that, if you were to include NPS as well, and here by NPS, it's just the 10% of corporate contributions. We aren't necessarily looking at any other top-ups, but that would actually increase that to a very respectable 63%, right? So which is considered to be a reasonable outcome, especially comparing with how some of the social pension plans have been set up in the West. Now, just a few disclaimers here. The first thing is, to be able to achieve something like this, you have to start early. So here the assumption is the person has actually started not just PF and gratuity, which are mandatory, but NPS and SAF as well at the age of 23 to be able to achieve these outcomes. The longer we delay investment, I think everybody knows the power of compounding. It works for us if we start early. It can work against us if we start late. So I think the idea is to start early. The other assumption here is, very clearly that some of these investment returns, right? So I think I spoke a little bit about a lot of this risk lying on individuals. So remember that nothing is guaranteed here. You could go through periods where, investment returns are volatile. Annuity rates we've seen fluctuate quite a fair bit. But essentially over the long run, we feel that these strategies do work, but again, there are a lot of risks that are falling to the individual in any case, right? So all the more reason to be able to give yourself the best chance of success. Right, now let me just flip this around and talk a little bit from the employer standpoint and what they've been thinking. So this survey is from about 1.5 years ago. But like I said, some of the themes will continue to exist, and as soon as we have the latest findings, we'll be happy to share them with you. So the first slide basically talks about adoption of NPS, right? And I think so. Chairman sir mentioned that about 8,000 or 9,000 odd companies are now effectively offering membership of corporate NPS. But given these are offered mainly as voluntary programs, as I'll show you, some of the take-up rates continue to be low. But here, what's good to see is every year we do this survey, the number of companies who respond by saying they are already providing NPS keeps going up. So, right. So this survey suggests that about 50% already have NPS. A year and a half ago, and another 20% were looking at implementing or considering the implementation. So I think the next cut, I think definitely we'll see more than 50% companies already offering NPS to their employees. Here, just a few additional things to talk about. The first one probably at the top of the screen that you can see is around take-up rates. So you see that about a third of our respondents actually said that the take-up rate within the company is less than 5% for NPS, and at the other extreme, we had about 8% respondents say that they have 25% or more people who sign up for voluntary NPS programs. So overall, eligibility remains around the 10 to 11% mark, and here is where we feel as employers there's definitely more that we can do. Just in terms of creating awareness, we're not necessarily saying we create financial incentives, but creating awareness by at least bringing to the table, what their options are, at least helping employees be able to quantify, what kind of retirement outcomes they can expect, and how they can alter some of those outcomes by taking some additional steps, such as enroll in NPS. So I think those are very clearly some responsibilities that will fall, which are falling on the employer, and the employers actually have acknowledged that as well. And just some other, stats on the screen. On the left, you see there's quite a lot of flexibility that companies provide when it comes to, being able to pick the level of contribution. So only about 10%, only 30% actually said we only let people opt in at 10%. Most of the other companies seem to allow employees to opt in, let's say, at lower levels, right? Because the key is to start early. You can always increase it later, but we want to make sure that people are able to at least start, even if you start small, start early. I think that's the key thing. Also, we feel that there are very few financial incentives, but I think more than financial incentives, what might be needed is, like I said, education and awareness, and encouragement to engage with learning more about products such as the NPS. This slide shows a little bit about the superannuation funds and the kind of future that we see for superannuation funds. Unfortunately, they're not as popular as they probably once were, and gradually companies are looking at consolidating provision of retirement arrangements, and therefore, with the ability to port superannuation over to the NPS, we see more and more companies potentially taking up this route. So that people are truly mobile and portable when it comes to their retirement savings, and NPS gives them that, as Sir mentioned earlier. So we see, I think, 8 to 10% companies have already ported their old superannuation plans, and we see about another 1/3 planning to do it in the next couple of years. So like I said, we'll do a refresh on this and see actually how many actually went ahead with their plans, which may have been deterred a little bit, given some of these IT approvals require in-person attendance, but definite shift from SAF towards NPS, as we can see from the respondents. Right, I'm nearly out of time, but I'll just quickly touch upon some of the other regulatory changes that have happened sort of in the background. So firstly, we do know that now there's an overall cap of INR 7.5 lakhs on the total employee contributions towards retirement arrangements such as PF, superannuation, and NPS. And while this slide is a little bit old, I would expect companies maybe haven't responded just to this particular announcement. But as I'll show you on the next slide, which is some of the other codes that are changing, companies are reacting to some of that. Or are having to react to some of that, and that's basically the labor codes, in particular, the code on wages and the code on social security, which is likely to impact what we're calling the definition of wages. And that definition of wages is likely based on what we've found across maybe 40 or 50 assignments that we've done now for companies to take stock of what impact they can expect. But there's definitely going to be an increase both from gratuity accrual provision. Whether the PF contributions go up remains to be seen, because in PF, that there's that salary ceiling which applies, but to what extent the rules will enforce moving to a higher salary remains to be seen. And given, there's a CTC concept in India, will employers be willing to pick up some of that extra cost so that the in-hand take-home pay is protected for employees? All of these are questions that we're going to have to get through as more clarity emerges around the wage code and exactly how it is implemented. That's all. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to the questions later in the session. So thank you so much, and I'll now pass back.
Thank you, Mr. Banerjee, for a very insightful presentation, very interesting. And thank you particularly for highlighting the various options that people have in terms of retirement planning. There will be lots of questions, I'm sure, for you. In fact, we already have a few questions directed at you, which have come to that during the question and answer session. In the meanwhile, I'd like to invite Mr. Monu Fukan. He is the Chief General Manager at PFRDA. He's going to make a presentation on the national pension itself. Over to you, Mr. Fukan.
Thank you, Mr. I'll just share my slide.
Yes.
I just want to speak about not much about NPS. I just want to talk more about the features, how it works. So to keep it very short, I'd like to first highlight about the unique features of what NPS is all about. So a lot has been said about that, but what I want to highlight on the first point is that the pension account number is unique in the sense that the account remains same with the individual throughout his working life, whether he is attached to an employer or without an employer. If it's a changing employers or he changes his location, the number remains the same. It is not that when you change an employment, you need to open a no. The earlier account can be transferred. And if it's not without an employer, if he's doing a own venture, then also the account can be continued without an employer. So what we say that an individual can have only one account and he cannot open another account in that. So we have kept checks and balances, and the same account will be continuing throughout his working life till the point of maturity. Cost, yes, we have said that it is the lowest cost pension product, but not only in India, it's around the globe also. So the benefit of having a low cost scheme is that cost doesn't eat away your earnings or your accumulations over a period of time. And this has a lot of impact on your corpus accumulation during a tenure of 20 to 30, 25 years or 30 years. Choices, there are a lot of choices, plenty of choices that are open to subscribers. You need to choose the fund manager, the way his contributions will be allocated or invested by the fund managers. So I'll have a different slide on that. I'll come to in detail. Returns, yes, we have been, fund managers have been able to deliver nearly about 9 to 10% returns over a period of 12 to 13 years of past records that we have. Taxes, we say that it is a very efficient tax product or a scheme. You have a lot of tax breaks on while contributing. The accumulations is also tax-free, and at the point of exit, there's the amount that has been paid to the subscriber or the individual is also tax exempt. The way it has been done for the annuity part and the lump sum that we give. On the tax part, Madam Beckwith will be speaking out in detail and explaining out in detail. Next choice, next was about the transparency and the access that we give. So what we mean is that all the transactions can be traced. It can be monitored online, and you can transact online 24/7. So at any point of time, whatever the balances are there or how you have transacted on an account is being visible to the individual. And above all over of this is that the entire system is regulated by PFRD. So when we talk about a pension account, we mean the Tier 1 account in the nomenclature that was given in the system. So you open this account, the base pension account with only 5,000, that is 500 rupees. That is the minimum amount that is required to open the account, and a minimum contribution of 1,000 rupees is being set. But we don't have any restrictions on the number of contributions that a subscriber can make, or in the amount of contributions that he can make or he or she can make. So you have complete flexibility according to your cash flows. You can plan it, and or you can give an instruction to your employer to cut certain percentage of your salary, the wages or your salary. So we have kept that flexibility of saying that the contributions can be made at any point of time and any amount, and the minimum is 1,000 rupees a year. And this pension account has all the tax benefits that has in the system. So when you have a pension account, you have the another option to open a Tier 2 account. It's more of a savings kind of an investment account. It's earlier the concept of a GPF was there, so it is more of aligned to that concept, wherein withdrawals are permitted. So it is a supplement to the pension account, where it's an investment account. If any surplus which we want to withdraw or liquid funds we want to invest and withdraw it after a short period of time, this is the account. That is optional, and it can also be opted at the initial stages or at the later point also after opening the pension account. So here also only 1,000 rupees is required. And 250 is the minimum contributions. Here also we don't have any restrictions on the number of contributions or the amount of contributions that the person makes, and it is freely withdrawable. It has all the benefits of the NPS architecture that offers to the pension account. So for joining NPS, we call it as the entry. I have broken the slides into 3 parts: joining, entry, accumulation, and the exit part or the maturity part. So joining, we have kept only one condition, that is he should be an individual age between 18 to 70 years. Previously, this age was 65 years. Recently, we have increased it to 70 years. And we require a photograph, address proof, and a identity proof. A PAN is there, so we have said that PAN should be submitted later also, or if it doesn't have at the initial time of opening the account. And it can be opened online with an Aadhaar authentication also, that is paperless. You can sign with the Aadhaar e-sign. So no need of submitting a physical form. This is completely a paperless mode of opening the account. And we have also kept the parallelly the physical submission of forms also. We have an application that can be submitted to our distribution channels. We have around 95 of distribution points, which is there with, along with their branches, it comes to around 85,000 touch points of those centers that we have, through which it can be opened through submission of a physical form also. So when I talk about accumulation, the account opening has been done. You can contribute, you can open that with a minimum of 500, then the contribution flows. So what we say is that we have kept the flexibility on the part of contributions also. The subscriber can, or the individual can contribute by his own self, even if there is an employer or without an employer. If he has an employer also, we say that, okay, he can also contribute, or he need not contribute, the employer will also, can only contribute. So we have kept this flexibility, either the employer or the employee can contribute, or they can both contribute. And if they want to both contribute, employer and employee, we have kept the proportion also flexible. It's not equal. It can be unequal also. So this combination is being there. This contribution can flow from the employer and the employer in different proportion or in equal proportion. So according to his suitability or his tax planning, he can, subscriber can make the contributions to this pension account. Once his contribution comes in, it is invested by the fund managers. We call it as a pension funds. And these are being invested as per the investment guidelines that have been given by the regulator, the PFRDA. And this pension fund declares the net asset value of the scheme or the asset class that the subscriber chooses. So what happens is that the contribution that is being made is converted into units by a record keeper. We call it as a central record keeping agency, CRA. And in the pension account, units will get on credited every time a individual or a subscriber makes contribution. So whatever we have in the pension account is the balance of the units that will be reflected. So the value of the units will be the NAV of that is declared by the fund manager, which is declared on a daily basis. And since all the assets are marked to market, the NAV also fluctuates. So a subscriber wanting to know the value of his fund, it is NAV of the scheme or the asset class multiplied by the unit that is being reflected in the pension account. So as and when the contributions are made, units goes on credited to the pension account. So the unit grows, and also the NAV that at the rate of whatever the interest that has been earned between 9 to 10%, it is also getting accumulated into this pension account. So this is the entire accumulation phase till the point of maturity. The point of maturity, we call it as an exit. We have given it the premature exit and a normal exit. Normal exit is what we say it's at 60 years or the superannuation age. The superannuation age can be lower than 60 or higher than 60 also. We don't have any restrictions on that. So it depends on the employer telling us what is the superannuation age for the employer. So at that point of a normal exit, what we say that the corpus that has been accumulated in the pension account, 60% will be paid as lump sum that is being cashed to the bank account of the subscriber, and 40% will be utilized. Minimum 40% should be utilized for purchasing an annuity plan that gives a regular pension. And if the corpus is less than or equal to 5 lakhs, we say that the entire amount can be paid into the cash or in a lump sum to the subscriber. Premature exit is not a normal exit. We say that after 5 years of joining the scheme, a subscriber can exit the scheme, but we have kept a higher percent of annuity. That is 80% of the corpus should be annuitized. That means utilized for purchasing an annuity plan, and only 20% will be paid as a lump sum since it's a pension scheme, that a pension product. So we ensure that certain regular flow of income goes into the subscriber. And if the corpus is less than or equal to 2.5 lakhs, the amount is paid in full. That is in as a lump sum. And in case of unfortunate death, what happens is that the corpus that being outstanding or in the balance lying in the pension account is being paid to the nominee. The nominee also has a choice whether to take it in the lump sum, the 100% of the corpus, or he or she can buy a annuity plan from any of the annuity service providers or the insurance companies that are empaneled with us. The benefit of buying an annuity plan from NPS is that it is exempt from GST of applicable, that is currently applicable of 1.8%. So as I told you that annuity, the 40%, minimum 40% of the corpus has to be annuitized. So a person can annuitize 100% of his corpus also. There is no restrictions on that. We allow. The minimum is 40. And we have empaneled 14 leading insurance companies that offer different annuity plans. So they offer a variety of plans, all these 14 insurance companies. And the subscriber needs to choose any one of them. And once he chooses the service provider, that's the insurance company, then he needs to choose the plan according to the his requirements. Basically, whether he requires the annuity for himself, pure annuity, and nothing is left behind for the legal heirs or the nominees or the spouse, or he can say that, okay, I get the pension, my spouse also gets the pension, and whatever the money that has been paid to the insurance company, that also has to be returned to the the nominees. So there are different types of plans. So according to his requirements or his family requirements, the plan has to be chosen. And we have a comparative chart also online that can be, the subscriber can use. It displays the various rates or the various amounts that are being payable for per lakh of rupees of the purchase price. So this is the last point of the maturity part, wherein 60% will be paid lump sum, and the last part is of choosing the annuity plan from this insurance, any one of the insurance companies, so that the pension flows. So as I told you about the choices, the first choice is about the record keeper. We have 3 record keepers, NSDL, KFIN, and CAMS. CAMS will be operationalized within this month, but NSDL and KFIN are currently working. And the next choice comes about the fund managers or the pension funds. So who will, we have professional fund managers, 7 of them are there, and they have been exclusively formed or established to work for PFRD. So they have the professional expertise of fund management, and they manage the funds as per the investment guidelines, or any one fund manager needs to be chosen. I think we have given the option now to choose 3 fund managers by the subscriber. So this choice also is not sacrosanct. It can be changed once in a year. So asset allocation is nothing but how your contributions will be distributed or invested amongst the asset classes or the types of investment instruments that we offer. So we offer 4 types of asset classes or types of investment options, that is equity, corporate bonds, government securities, and alternate assets. But we have kept restrictions on equity, saying that only 75% of your entire contribution don't flow to equity. The rest 25% should go to the other asset classes of corporate bonds, government securities, and alternate assets. Also, we have kept a limit of 5%. So this choice, we call it an active choice, when the subscriber knowingly says that this percentage of my contribution should go to this type of the asset classes or the type of investment options. So this also can be changed twice in a year. Or 4 times in a year. Sorry, this is being updated. So we have changed recently. There, it has been allowed to change 4 times in a year. The system will be developed, I think, within for some 15 days or a month. So we have the option to change 4 times in a year. So if some subscriber feels that no, I'm not very conversant with the markets, I don't know what is it. So we offer another choice that is called an auto choice as a life cycle fund. Here, what we say that is that between the 3 asset classes of government securities, corporate bonds, and equity, there is a predetermined proportion of allocation to these 3 different asset classes. So we call it as a life cycle aggressive fund, that is 75, and moderate one, life cycle 50, and a conservative, life cycle 25. So conservative, moderate, or aggressive, what we say that LC 75, 50, and 25 denotes is the equity exposure. So in an aggressive fund, 75% of the contributions will go to equity, 10% to corporate bonds, and 15% to government securities. And a conservative, only 25% will go to equity, 45% to corporate bonds, and 30% to only to government securities. So this proportion will remain constant till the age of 35. On each birthday, on the 36th birthday of the subscriber, what will happen is that the equity proportion will goes on reducing. So it's an auto rebalancing of the portfolio. So in an aggressive fund, it reduces by 4% equity. The moderate one, 50 LC50, it reduces by 2%. And the last one, the conservative one, the equity goes on reducing by 1% on each birthday of the 36th birthday of the subscriber. So at the end of 50 years, what happens is that the aggressive fund of 55 years, what happens is that the aggressive fund has an equity exposure of 25%. The moderate one has a 10%. And a conservative one, or the LC25, has a equity exposure of 5%, and it remains constant till the age of 60. So this choice also can be changed 4 times in a year between the auto or between the active also. Somebody can switch from auto to active, also is permitted. So returns has been told about this, that a fund managers has been able to deliver more around 10% of returns over the period of 12 to 13 years. So this is an average return of all the 7 fund managers. Equity, yes, a 13.07% over a period of 12 years. This is as on 4th of February. Corporate bonds 9.58, government securities 8.96, and central government, state government funds are a composite scheme. Basically, we have an equity exposure of 15, corporate bond of around 30 to 35%, and a government security of 50%. So this composite return of over a period of 13 years for the central government employees, where we have around 22 lakhs of employees. So it is around 9.71 over a period of 13 years. And for the state government, it is 9.58%. So as I told you, the number of subscribers that are there, total number of subscribers that PFRD currently is under the NPS and APY is nearly about 5 crores. Around 3 crores, 85 lakhs are under the government sponsored schemes of Atal Pension Yojana and NPS Life. So the central government is around 22.63 lakhs of subscribers, and state governments around 55.22,000 employees are there under the state governments. And for the corporate, that is the employer-employee relationship between the subscribers are there, 13.62 lakhs. And under individual subscribers who have come on their voluntarily on their own, joined the scheme, are 20 lakhs 57,000. So the entire total corpus contributed by all the subscribers, nearly about 5 crores, is around 7 lakhs 6,000, wherein Central and state government comprises of around 5,65,000, and the rest it belongs to the non-government sector. So 1,15,000 is on the corporate and the individual subscribers that are with there, and for the government sponsored scheme, it's around 25,000 crores. So I'll just give you a snapshot display of the accessibility or the online facilities that are there. We have a mobile app. We have given online login to the subscriber also. The user ID is the account number, that is the pension account number that we call as a permanent retirement account number, which remains constant throughout the working life. So it's easy to remember. And if the password also can be generated online, it's an OTP based, you can generate the password and access the account online. So the OTP will be going to the registered mobile number. And with this online on the web login on the mobile app, transactions can also be done. It's not a viewing platform. It's a transaction can also be done. You can change the fund manager. You can contribute. You can give partial withdrawal requests. You can give withdrawal requests also. You can change your nominations also. So the last slide that I come to about is about the system that we have set in for redressing grievances for the subscribers. We have a central grievance redressal mechanism. That's an online platform. So there's a regulation to it also, how the grievances, if a subscriber lodges into the system or he has any issues with the services, he can raise it, and we have a regulation to say that, okay, at what time period it has to be resolved, by whom and how it's to be resolved, and there's an escalation metrics too also. So I'll just give you a step up of those escalation metrics. What happens is that if subscriber lodges any grievances in the system, he can submit it online through an email or through the platform that we have, or through a physical letter also. So once it is there, it is updated in the system, and it has to be resolved by the entity within the period of 30 days. So if the resolution has to be given within 30 days, and once the resolution is being given, the subscriber feels that he is not satisfied or he needs a further redressal of it, he can escalate. So the escalation matrix is also there. So first to the trust, then we have an ombudsman, then we have the PFRDA, the authority office, and then if it's not satisfied with the authority's resolution also, or it can escalate to the Securities Appellate Tribunal. So we don't have any such cases escalated beyond our purview, means that has gone beyond us. And in fact, there are only a few cases also at the ombudsman level. So thank you. At the end of the session, we'll be open for questions. We'll be happy to answer the participants any queries do they have. Over to you, Mr. Vishwajit.
Thank you, Mr. Fukan, for a wonderful presentation, very insightful about the benefits of, not just the benefits of NPS, but also how to go about it and how you can go into the web platform, actually contribute, add to your portfolio, change your fund managers, etc. Thank you very much for that. I think very insightful for most of our participants. Now, may I invite Ms. Behroz Kamdin. She is the partner at Deloitte Haskins Sells LLP, and she is going to talk about taxation and its implications. Yes, how it help us. Over to you, Ms. Kamdin.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chakravarti. Thank you, Mr. Bandyopadhyay, for inviting us to be a speaker on this panel. And most importantly, thank you because it's a so Guwahati, fond memories of Guwahati. I've been there 3 times. And the first time that I went there, something unusual had happened. And therefore, it's been stuck with me. It's a very beautiful place. It's naturally very beautiful. It has many temples also. But what happened is, in those years, 30 years back, we used to have one train which used to go once a week to Guwahati, taking 3 days of travel. We had gone by that train, and on the return, we missed our train. An unusual thing happened is that generally, we've never heard of preponing of trains, but because of situations then prevailing, our train was preponed, and we've never read about it in the newspapers. You don't see newspapers when you're on holidays. And we missed the train. And the people were so nice. They helped us. They put us onto a train. So I really thank the people of Guwahati. They were so very nice. They put us on a train. We went to Gorakhpur. From Gorakhpur also there was someone who helped us. The policemen helped us. And then they put us on a train to Mumbai. And we could come within the same timeline. Otherwise, I would have to stay 1 week in Guwahati. So thank you so much. And it really brings very fond memories of very nice people at Guwahati. So coming to the topic, we have a presentation which we'll discuss on. NPS, basically pension. I think Mr. Bandyopadhyay, Suranjan and Mono have spoken about it to say how important pension is. And it truly helps because like Mr. Bandyopadhyay mentioned, and I've actually seen it, whatever you save for your provident fund, your PF and your gratuity, when you invest that and the return that you get per month is not sufficient, the pension added to those returns really help you. So whenever we look at returns and we look at investment opportunities, we look at net of tax. Every individual is being taxed at a different slab. So you look at your tax slabs, you see what are your tax slabs, then you work out what is your net of tax returns, and then accordingly decide where you want to make your investments. But try making your investments in different sort of avenues and not concentrate only on one avenue. So Mono, can I request you to please share the screen? So what we've done is that we have tried to see what the tax implications are at the 4 stages which are there in the life cycle of a retirement fund. And I can tell you NPS, one more additional benefits that an NPS gives is, which Mono did refer to, is the portability of the account. I was working initially and I left that organization after completing 8 years of service. And the requirement was that you need to be working for 10 years of service to be eligible for pension at the age of 60. And since I left, all the employers' contribution lapsed. If it was an NPS at that point of time, I would have been able to carry forward that amount. So NPS in that manner is so unique. When you leave organizations, you can carry that account with you. Employers' contribution does not lapse. It stays in your account, which is very important. The second importance, I think, is that you don't have to be an employer-employee relationship. Individually, you can open. So I've opened an NPS account just as an individual. And that's very key. And then there's no requirement of any minimum or maximum amounts that can be invested. Minimum amount is there, which is 500. But otherwise, you can invest much more. And invest, there's no requirement that employer and employee should invest equally also. So I think NPS, all have spoken of a lot of advantages which are there. And of course, the return on investment, which is also very important, and the risk attached to it, which Suranjan did mention about, and even Mono has spoken about. So when we look at tax incentives for NPS, if you can go to the next slide, 4 stages that we look at. One is when the employer makes the contribution. Is it going to be taxed in my hands? Am I going to get any deductions because of the employer's contribution? When the employee or the individual makes the contribution, am I going to save tax? And government over the years have been encouraging savings. We have got deduction in the ATC, ATCC, ATCCD. So we know that government has always encouraged savings, has given certain tax benefits. So what are those benefits when the employer or individual contributes? What happens to the accretal on year? Because it's a long-term retirement fund, I need to know whether the accretal also will get taxed or it will not get taxed. And then what happens on the withdrawal? So at the age of retirement at 60, 65, now I think the age has been exceeded. You can keep that fund for longer period up to 70 or maybe more. When you receive that amount, how is it going to be taxed? So all the 4 things have to be looked into whenever a retirement planning is being done. So if you go to the next slide. So this is we've tried to cover everything into one slide, and therefore it's quite a filled up slide in that manner. But basically, when you have individual contributions, it says that you get a deduction for the individual contribution under ATCCD. If it's an employee, then it's up to 10% of the salary. And if it's non-employee, then up to 20% of your total income. But this whole thing comes within the limit of 1,50,000. So we know that we have ATC, where we have PF, we have insurance, PPF, and etc. and that. So it all gets covered and everything aggregate is 1,50,000. But for NPS, there's an exclusive additional deduction of 50,000 rupees. So immediately when you save 50,000 rupees, you save tax. Depending on which bracket you are in, you immediately save that much of tax amount because you get a deduction of 50,000 exclusively for NPS when an employee or individual contributes. Tax should not be an incentive, but if it is being given, we should take the benefit. So there are two types of taxations now in India. One is a normal rate of tax where you get all these deductions, and one is a lower rate of tax where you don't claim any deductions. Not only ATCCs and CCDs, but several other deductions for an employee don't claim. Generally, we found that Indians always like to save, and they are able to save. So wherever you have savings and you can save, you would generally prefer to take a deduction. So if the government has given some benefit, why should you let go of that benefit? So if you're in the lower tax, if you're taking the lower tax rates under new scheme, then you will not get this deduction. Otherwise, you get the deduction for employees. Now, contribution made by the employer. Whenever the employer makes a contribution, the section says that it's going to be part of my salary. So the entire employer's contribution, whatever is done, is part of my salary. But then they have gone and provided a deduction on the ATCCD2 to say that if it doesn't exceed 15% in case of central government, 14% in case of central government employees. And this budget has made the change to also include state government employees. So if it doesn't exceed 14% of your salary, you get a deduction for it. And in case of other employees, if it doesn't exceed 10% of your salary. So in that manner, if you look at it, employer's contribution is not taxable at all. It gets taxed at one place and you then get a full deduction for it if it's below those percentage thresholds which are being provided. So it is something which every employer should look at to say, and every employer should also look at it from a financial well-being of the employees. See, taking certain benefits which are available in the Act and ignoring them is not correct. So you can easily look at those benefits. I mean, educate your employees on what the benefits are, what the risk is, what the returns are, and then you can look at how you can make a deduction for it. There was a slight change in the employer's contribution. Now what they have done in the Finance Act, we'll discuss this a little later, but the Finance Act has gone and aggregated all employers' contribution to retirement funds like PF, superannuation, and NPS. And if it exceeds 7,50,000, then it's taxable. That's a Finance Act 2020 amendment which has come, which we'll discuss later. Even if the employee goes for a lower rate of tax as per the new tax regime, you can still get a deduction for employer's contribution. So it's a benefit which has been given by government. Employer's contribution up to a particular threshold is fully deductible whether you go on a lower rate or on a normal rate. And it is also, though taken as salary, you get a full deduction for it. And even a deduction for the employer. So employer is part of salary. So anyway, it's going to be an expense that he's going to claim as an expenditure when he's computing his total income. Annual accretion to the NPS account. Annual accretion when the employee's account which is there or individual account, whatever annual accretion is there, it's not taxable. You compare this with your PF, which change has come in last year. On the PF, there is some amount of taxation if the contribution exceeds 2,50,000. In case of NPS, whether it's more than 2,50,000 or less than 2,50,000, annual accretion on the employee or individual accounts, there's no taxation when it is being accreted till the retirement. On employer's contribution, also there is no taxation. However, if the limit is crossed, then on the excess of that amount, there is some taxation. So we'll discuss this a little later. But generally speaking, on employer's contribution, also on the annual accreted, it is not taxable. Withdrawal from the fund. Withdrawal from the fund on maturity. Mono has spoken about it. 60% what you get is exempt. Specific provision in the law will say 60% of the portfolio of the fund as on the date of maturity is exempt. 40% has to be compulsorily taken into an annuity policy. So again, that is exempt. So 100% of the fund value as on the date of maturity is not taxable. However, whatever annuities you receive, that annuities will be fully taxable. So there is no deduction given for the purchase cost of the annuity. Entire annuities received will be taxable. But then you can always look at various types of annuities which are provided. There are several schemes of annuities which are there, and you can look at those the way it has to be structured. Partial withdrawal from the fund. Partial withdrawals are allowed, and even during COVID times, they have allowed partial withdrawals. The Act says that 25% of the employee's contribution, to the extent of 25% of the employee's contribution, the partial withdrawal should not be taxable. Anything over and above the 25% of employee's contribution, it will become taxable. Now the question arises, the word used is employee. So if an individual like me were to contribute and if we were to withdraw, would it become taxable? I don't think the intent was to tax them, because if you look at the way NPS has come, and Mr. Bandyopadhyay mentioned, it came from employees part of it first, and then the universe individuals could contribute. So the intention was first to have coming for employee, central, state, private sector. So therefore, maybe the word employee is used. Intention is not there, but that's how the law is today. So today there is a risk that it is a partial withdrawal by an individual. It may be fully taxable. Contribution tier 2 account, like Mono mentioned, tier 1 account is taken as a pension account where you have all these tax benefits. Tier 2 account is like a normal mutual fund account. Only thing, you get additional benefits out of the tier 2 account because your cost is low. You could get STT benefits which are there, because STT is not applicable on transaction done by NPS. So you can get some benefits like that, but otherwise the tier 2 account is like a normal mutual fund account. What the Act provides is that central government employees, when they contribute to tier 2 account also, they can take that as a deduction under section 80C, subject to they holding it for a period of 3 years. Only if they hold it for a period of 3 years, they can get under section 80C, and that too within the overall limit of 1,50,000. So it doesn't exceed more than 1,50,000. More than 1,50,000 exclusive benefit has been given to contribution to NPS tier 1 account. If you go to next slide. This is a change which is brought about by the Finance Act 2020. So what was happening was, earlier we had 3 different sort of retirement funds. You had the Provident Fund, some private institutions had superannuation funds, and you had NPS. And the contributions that were being made, various taxations was applicable to it. For a Provident Fund, normally if it's less than 12% of the salary, it was not taxable. So entire employer's contribution was not taxable. For NPS, we had discussed that employer contribution, though taxed, was also getting a full deduction for it. Then we had contribution to superannuation fund, where you got deduction up to 1,50,000. If it was contributed, it was not taxable. Anything in excess of 1,50,000 was taxable. So the Finance Act then said, let's aggregate all the 3 contributions of employers. And if all the 3 in aggregate exceeds more than 7,50,000, then the aggregate will be taxable. So only the amount exceeding 7,50,000 was taxable. And that's come into effect from the last year. March 21, assessment year 21-22. This is come into effect. And then they also brought in saying that the annual accretion on this excess of the employer's contribution will be taxable. And they have prescribed the manner in which you have to calculate the excess amount, and the manner in which you have to calculate the tax amount, the annual accretion, which is going to be taxable. So the rule has been provided. Rule 3B has been prescribed now with effect from 1st April 21. Can we go to the next slide, please? So rule 3 says how you have to work out the annual accretion, which is going to be taxable. And they've given a formula, which is very nice in that manner because it's simple. They have said you take the contributions of all the 3, aggregate it. If it's more than 7,50,000, the excess you take and you average it by 2. So over the year, whatever has been done averages out. Then you multiply by the rate of return. And this is where the whole question comes up. The rate of return, the way you have to work out, is based on a formula again. And this they have tried to do because you go most nearer to whatever return you will actually get as an employee or individual. What you get as an employee, as you get, that is what they have tried to do. They have not fixed a particular rate of return, say 7%. They have said there's a working true period. So now when you look at the rate of return, it says that all the aggregate income earned on this during the year. So whatever income you earn on Provident Fund, Superannuation Fund, NPS, you aggregate the income and you divide by the average of the opening and closing balances in these accounts. Now, as an employer, when I'm doing withholding taxes, I may not have information of the closing balance. I may not have information on the income that is going to be accruing. And therefore, there's some estimations that have to be done, which every month, maybe later on, as the year comes to an end, it will be more closer to your estimation. But you need to look at the estimations. The question that arises here is, what is income on NPS? Because they use the word dividends, interest, and some similar manner. NPS, I don't get any dividends, I don't get any interest. Only the value of my portfolio increases. Something was there on the first day of the year, something is a portfolio value on the last day of the year. Is that differential going to be taken as income? And assuming today, yes, the markets have been doing so good, it's been rising. Assuming the markets come down, then what's going to happen? And we've seen in the last few days, we've seen the markets also go down. What is going to then happen if the markets come down? There could be a loss in my portfolio. So is that loss going to be set off against the other income and then the aggregators will be taken? So there are some questions which are there on this. But today, as it stands, the way the rule has been provided, you need to aggregate all the income and you need to divide the opening and closing balances of the funds for all the three funds together. And you arrive at the interest rate. And that apply the interest for the current excess amount of employer's contribution plus what are the opening balances are there. So on the opening last year's excess plus last year's income, you apply the same rate. So you do it year on year and you work it out. So this is what they have prescribed in the rule, and that has to be computed on year basis. This year is the first year for this, where the computation will be applicable. If you go to the next slide, so this is all from us. This is some illustration that we have given based on 31st March 21, what it could be, and if you take it in the next year, which we can look at. So I'm fine. I'm done with my presentation, and over to you, Mr. Vijit. We'll be happy to take any questions if then.
Thank you very much for a very detailed presentation on the tax benefits and tax implications of retirement planning. Thank you for that insightful presentation. Now we have actually time for some questions and answers, and we have received quite a few questions. But if there are any further questions, please type out your question in the Ask a Question tab, and we will be happy to take them up. To begin with, we have a question for Mr. Monofukan. The question is from Mr. Trideep Talukdar. What is the minimum amount of yearly contribution in NPS account? Can I transfer the amount in any month, or it's mandatory for every month?
Yeah, basically what we have said is that we have kept the minimum contribution of 1,000 rupees in a year. So that can be deposited anytime during the year. And even if it's not deposited also, it's nothing adverse is going to happen into the account also. The amount of contribution can be flexible. It can, as I told you, it can be as per the cash flows of the individual also. If he has committed to the employer that the certain deduction is being made, then the regular flow is also can be made. Otherwise, also if it's a self-employed or it's on its own venture or it has opened at the individual capacity, he can deposit any point of time and any amount, subject to basically his known sources of income. That is another on the other rules of having anti-laundering things of that sort, compliance to that. So any amount at any point of time can be deposited. So there is no restrictions onto that.
Right. Thank you. The second question I feel is for Mr. Banerjee. The question is I am a self-employed individual. I run my own enterprise, and I have a PPF and a NPS account. Which one is more beneficial for me?
That's a really tough question, actually. I think both will come with their own sort of advantages, and maybe I'll, from a tax angle, maybe if Ms. Beros can add. I mean, I would say that both can be used to your advantage, given they both have different potential tax buckets. So from one perspective, you can look to maximize your tax savings if you're already committed to doing a certain level of PPF. There's no harm in adding NPS to your portfolio. It also comes with a different investment mix. So PPF is typical, sort of fixed income buy and hold strategies, whereas NPS is a mark-to-market day-to-day NAV tracking with equity exposure, right? So you can use you can add NPS and use that to, sort of scale up on your risk depending on your age and your risk appetite. But maybe, Ms. Beros, if you want to add anything from a tax perspective, which should be considered as well.
Sure, I'll add from tax, but maybe Mr. Bandyopadhyay wants to add further on this first, and then maybe I'll add on tax what the tax benefits are.
Right.
I have nothing more to add because Suranjan, I believe, has already said that. And I believe that no single scheme can take care of the retirement needs of a person completely. And as Suranjan has rightly pointed out, if somebody has a low risk appetite, better to put maybe more money in PPF and all that. But at the same time, PPA has its own limitations in the sense that you cannot put more than 1.5 lakh in a year. And if you have more money to invest and more cash flow, so obviously you have to look forward to other investment opportunities. And PPF normally tracks the interest rate scenario that we have. Currently, interest rates were going up, but what I have seen over last 15, 20 years is that normally it is a interest rate regime which normally tends to go down, and in between sometimes there are spikes. So, and PPF rates that way, they are also not constant today. Technically, they are supposed to be revised every quarter. Now, fortunately for last 3 quarters, PPF rates are held at 7.1%. But any day it can be reviewed. And I believe the last review was done after the December quarter. After March quarter, definitely there will be another review, and whatever reviews have been done so far, PPF rates have only gone down. So some people feel that it's a sort of a guaranteed kind of scheme, but it also does not give guarantee. If every 3 months it is going to be reviewed, and there is every possibility the rates may be changed. About the tax benefit, I believe ma'am can add.
Yeah. So on tax, basically, I think you have to look at it individually because it's important to understand that under which bracket are you there. So if you have already exhausted your 1,50,000 benefit under ATC and you have still some savings which are there, then of course NPS is there because you get an exclusive deduction of 50,000. Now, when you look at PPF, everyone says you get a deduction. So it is exempt when I'm making a contribution. Whatever I earn income on the PPF, it's not taxable, and on maturity again, it's not taxable. If you look at NPS also, depending on how much you're going to invest, but if it's within the deductible amount, then you're getting a deduction for it. The income on the NPS is not taxable. And on the maturity, 60% what you withdraw is not taxable. 40%, of course, you need to take annuity, but again, that is not taxable. So annuity, of course, is taxable. That's a subsequent investment that you're making. So that anyway, any other investment you make would have been taxable. So in that manner, if you look at it, PPF and NPS is very similar. Both look as EE if you're getting those deductions. If you're not getting those deductions, then the question comes as to whether you look at return, net of tax return. So then you look at the risk. Mr. Bandapatiya did mention that you get 7% return and you have a tax on that. There's no tax on PPF, sorry. So you get 7% return without tax. When you look at NPS also, when it's being accumulated, there's no tax on it again. And if you can also invest in government securities, I think NPS has this one very good feature. In government securities, you can put in 100%, which is like not actually guaranteed, but it's still government securities. So though it's not a guaranteed return which you're going to get in that, but it's still a government security and it's government of India. So it's quite safe in that manner. And the return on that also has been around 9%. So if you compare returns, then if you only look at government security NPS, that could give you the answer to it. But generally, we would have both. So I would have investment in PPF and NPS. I have not done in one.
Right. Thank you so much. We actually have another question on similar lines. It's not directed at anyone, but I think if Mr. Banerjee and Mr. Bandyopadhyay could address it. The question is mutual funds better for retirement planning as compared to NPS?
Mr. Chairman, would you like to take that first and I can add?
Yeah. So it all depends on, again, on the risk appetite of the person. Secondly, NPS has a very excellent inbuilt feature. The feature is that it does not allow early access to the fund. People complain that, okay, you don't give too much of liquidity. Yes, we have 3 times partial withdrawal, but basically it is created in a way that a large part of the corpus remains for the pensionary benefits for which people are coming and joining NPS. But if you look at mutual funds on given day, some of the mutual funds have given very good returns, no doubt about it. But they give early access. So you can access your funds at any point of time and thereafter you can utilize the fund. The moment this facility is available, I have my doubts how many people will really continue. There are pension schemes under mutual fund umbrella also. But if you look at the total amount accumulated under that, it will be hardly 15,000 crore, which is nothing compared to the entire mutual fund universe. So those schemes are also not taken very seriously by people. And they are also, after 5 years, access is available. So NPS is specially thought and built in a fashion that it gives you retirement benefits. That's why that 40% mandatory annuitization is there. So that is the thing. But on return terms, I can always say that there are schemes which are giving very good returns, even better than NPS. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think I'll just add to that by saying that I think so. You mentioned I think the very important point here to remember is that how can you make sure that you ring fence a certain amount of money for your retirement savings, right? So I think that is the key, and NPS has that feature, both I think two features, right? So I think one is that the inherent nature of the lock-in, so that it releases itself when you actually need it for retirement. And the other feature also is the life cycling, right? So mutual funds, typically, we don't normally read fine print, right? We don't normally read, what the exposures are, what are the top holdings. We typically are, only interested in the historic returns, and we have this bias that historic returns will repeat. Whereas NPS, somebody's already done a lot of that work for you, right? So, there are certain restrictions, checks and balances in place, which at very low cost, and still producing very good returns, right? So I would think that if you want to top up your retirement account, think of using the tier 2 as well, which in my experience works very well. Again, gives very competitive returns and benefits from the same very low cost infrastructure that is there. And you can think of that as your combined retirement corpus, right? Tier 1, where the tax benefits are. Tier 2 is what you do over and above that. And think of that as your retirement corpus, which you will not touch and use, other strategic assets, if you want to make returns of, markets and other things. But think of NPS, including tier 1, tier 2 as your corpus that you will, typically not touch.
Right. Thank you.
If I
We
can
have
just add
another
one
question.
point here. Can I just add one point here?
Yeah, please.
In mutual funds, whenever you go to redeem the mutual funds or sell the mutual funds, you'll have capital gains tax. So those capital gains, which even if you've held for say 15 years, 30 years, whenever the mutual funds, and generally now we've seen people holding mutual funds long term because the returns are good. And some mutual funds have given very good returns. So like Mr. Bandyopadhyay said, you have to look at your return post-tax. So if you look at those returns post-tax, in case of mutual funds, the capital gain is taxable. Long term could be a 10% whatever rate or 20%, but they are taxable. While if you look at NPS, when you're holding it for so long term, the portfolio value of the fund on maturity is not taxable. 60% you get as exempt and 40% is annuity, which again is exempt. But yeah, you have to take annuity on that, and annuity returns also have to be looked at. But you make an exercise of that and see what is a post-tax return coming. This is the mutual fund and the NPS.
Right. Right. The next question is from Mr. Ratikanta Das, and this is directed at the chairman. Sir, to you. The question is, sir, what would happen to the amount invested to buy annuity after the death of the dependent spouse? Will pension continue to come to the wards? Whether any amount may be returned to the wards? And with that, I would like to have another question. The question is, for how many years annuity payments will continue to be paid?
Yeah, normally annuities are designed like that these are lifetime annuities. So what we see that there are a lot of choices in annuities also. There are annuities which comes with equal amount of pension to the spouse, and on the death of the spouse, the entire corpus goes back to the nominee or legal heir, whoever is there. So that part I believe I have answered. So only thing is that the person has to choose accordingly while he or she is going for the annuity, that 40% part. So it is there. And annuity, as I said, the second question, it is a lifelong thing. So till the person is alive, the annuity is paid. And if it comes with a return of corpus, obviously corpus is given back. But there are cases where there are only life annuities without return of corpus. There obviously the annuity rates are higher. If the corpus comes back or the corpus does not come back, in the second case, the annuities I have seen, there is a difference between the two types of annuity. The rates will vary between 25 to 30%. And that's a big this thing. So people have to choose very wisely at the time when they are taking the annuity, whether they really need the corpus to be given to somebody. If it is not so, it is always better to enjoy a higher amount of annuity when somebody is alive. And again, longevity creates a huge problem. People are alive for at the age of 60 for another 18, 20, 25 years. So if somebody is enjoying annuity for 20, 25 years at a rate which is 25% higher than giving back the corpus, so obviously one has to really look into that. So there are different kinds of annuities.
Right, right, sir. The next question is again for Mr. Monofukan. The question is, I have opened two NPS accounts, one for my wife and another one of mine. Initially deposited 50,000 yearly each, but last year only 20,000 each. Can you tell us what is more beneficial? I think this answer has been given already, PPF or NPS. I think this has already been addressed. Then the next question is, can I withdraw my NPS amount anytime? This also has been addressed, but if you would like to.
Tier 1, now we have allowed premature withdrawal after 5 years, but there also only 20% of the corpus at that point of time will be given back in lump sum. 80% has to be annuitized because the scheme is designed like that. This is for not for early withdrawal. This is for your pension. So now that is the early withdrawal part. So if somebody wants and they have no other option but to withdraw, in that unfortunate case, they can come and withdraw after 5 years. But only 20% will be given in hand and 80% will be annuitized.
Right, right. The next question is there any charges applicable if we withdraw the pension amount before maturity?
Not really charges. No charges are applicable. As I said, after 5 years until your maturity means your retirement age, if you are working in an organization, suppose that organization has adopted, say 58 years at their retirement age. So at 58 years, this 60-40 formula will work. Or suppose it is 60 years maturity, this retirement age, then 60 years, this will work. Or for others like self-employed kind of persons where there is no employer-employee relationship, for them it is universally taken as 60 years. That is the age at which they will get that 60-40. Prior to that, it will always be, even if it is say 2 years earlier to 60 at the age of 58 also, it will be 2080. So, but no charges are applicable.
Right, sir. And we have one last question. If the organization, if the company makes a contribution to the employee's NPS account, is there any additional tax benefit available for that?
Additional tax benefit, as Madam Beros has already told, one is that when the employer makes a contribution, that is immediately added in the hands of the employee, but a similar amount of deduction is given under section 80 CCD 2. So for net for the employee, it is no, it is not giving any effect. It is not added as this thing, taken as perquisite and taxed directly. So far as employer is concerned, also employer gets a benefit because that will be treated as a business expenditure. That madam can tell better. Madam, if you can add.
Would you like to?
No. So there's no tax. Actually, there's a benefit. I think all employers should look at it. Employers' contribution, if it's within the limits at 10% and 14% limit, which has been given, then you can get a full deduction for it. So if it's a private sector companies, if the employer contributes up to 10% of salary, then a full deduction can be allowed. The only thing which you have to again look at is say that the aggregate should not exceed 7,50,000. So aggregate of NPS, PF and superannuation fund, if you have that, then the aggregate of that for the employer's contribution should not exceed 7,50,000. If it exceeds, then the excess is taxable. So that workings have to be done, but it's a very good benefit which the government has given.
Yes.
So when you have cost to company expenses, the cost to company up to 10% of your salary, you can get a deduction and not tax it.
Right.
And Mr. Chakraborty, if I may add one small point here.
Yes.
The employer contributing is a very, very positive thing. As I said, that is the small push that we require for employees to come and join here. And as Mr. Fukan has pointed out, that it is not necessary that the employer also has to contribute at the same level as the employees. So if the employee is contributing 10% of the salary, it's not necessary that the employer, even if they contribute, they have to contribute at 10%. It can be a small amount, even at 2%, 1% of the salary, a nominal amount, just to entice the people that I know organization, private sector in based out of Bangalore, I believe. They had given they did, that they had given one additional 1,000 rupee contribution per person who are joining NPS. And I believe now almost they had 15,000 employees, almost 85% people have joined. So the power of that 1,000 rupee is nothing. But that power of that 1,000 rupee is that if I join, I get that extra contribution from the employer. That has motivated a large chunk of people to join. So that way, to start with, I believe it's a good idea.
Right. I think that is a very important point, that employers, if they contribute something, even if a small amount for
amount,
employees
nominal
who
amount.
who subscribe to NPS, it could act as a major attraction for employees to subscribe. With that, I think we have come to the end of the question and answer session, and I'd like to thank every one of you, all the participants, for joining in, for asking the questions. All the speakers, particularly PFRDA, the chairman himself is here. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us, for your support. Mr. Banerjee, Ms. Kamdin, Mr. Fukan, thank you very much for joining us. And it's been a pleasure. It was a very informative session. I'm sure people have gained a lot in terms of knowledge about retirement planning. And if there are any further questions which come our way, we'll share that with you, and I hope you will address them.
Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.